This is Lisa from MobileTechReview, and it's three-way Smackdown time. Yeah, I know there's only two of them here. I don't have three hands. Sorry about that. But it's the HP Spectre x360 15-inch with AMD Vega graphics inside versus the Dell XPS 15 2-in-1 with the same AMD Vega inside and the Microsoft Surface Book 2 15-inch. We're going to smack them down now. All right, let's start with price because obviously for a lot of people, price is the primary concern. The HP Spectre x360 15-inch, even with the high-end AMD Vega version, is going to be the least expensive. Dell's XPS 15 2-in-1, well, in general, the XPS line is their most expensive, their most prestigious of the consumer, moving over into corporate a little bit line. Now, the same is true actually for HP with the Spectre. That's their high line, but part of its bobness, or best of the bestness, is you get pretty high-end stuff there for several $100s less money. Lastly, there's Surface Book 2 15-inch. That's going to be the most expensive, in part because Microsoft charges more, so they don't compete so directly with their OEMs, their other manufacturers, but also you're paying for some pretty unique and useful stuff. You can watch my review of that to find out what that stuff is if you're not quite sure. In terms of quality and build, they're all really at the top, and they should be at this price range. Very high quality materials, very good build, no uneven seams or anything like that. And when it comes to looks, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You decide which of these you like the best. I think the Spectre probably is the flashiest and the one that maybe more people like the look of, but I don't know. That's up to you. The Spectre and the XPS 15, well, the XPS 15 is a few scant millimeters thinner. When you're talking super thin versus super thin, I don't think that's going to matter so much. Surface Book 2 is the one with the weird wedge shape, thanks to that fulcrum hinge design, so it has a little space in between the two surfaces, so you know whether you dislike that or not. In order of preference, for keyboard, the Surface Book 2, I like that keyboard the best. Travel is very good on it. The damping is very good. It just doesn't take much adjustment. You just sit down, you just type on. It feels pretty normal. Next is the HP Spectre x360, which has normal travel. Yay, go HP. 1.5 millimeters. It feels like a little bit less. I think that's because not much force is required to push the keys. I might like them to be a little bit firmer, but it's a pretty good keyboard. Obviously, all these are backlit. Lastly, there's the XPS 15 2-in-1, which has that weird maglev keyboard now, 0.7 millimeters of travel. It's exceptionally low travel, sort of like current generation MacBooks and MacBook Pros, but it has more click to it. So as a no travel, virtually no travel keyboard goes, it feels great, but it's still the weird one, the outlier here. So if you don't want to mess with weird keyboards, it wouldn't be the one for you. How about display? Well, for both 1080p and 4K, Dell wins versus HP. Well, why is that? Because HP doesn't even offer a 1080p display option. For several generations, they just haven't with the 15-inch Spectre x360. Well, why would you want 1080p? Number one, it's less money usually. Number two, battery life, particularly in Dell XPS land after testing many generations of XPS 13 and 15, and given what Dell says, you get 2.5 to 3 hours longer battery life if you go with that 1080p display. Also, if you want to play today's AAA games, more demanding titles, sometimes it's more of a pain when you have a 4K resolution display and you have to get it to adjust resolutions and all that sort of thing, so 1080p might be a good starting place. So Dell does have that option. It seems to be a standard, nice looking display like the XPS 15 non-convertible version, so it's probably just about as nice a display maybe as the HP in terms of color gamut and contrast. But when we're talking 4K, they win again because they have the highest quality 4K display. It has the full Adobe RGB color gamut. It's a very wide color range. The HP is very respectable. It has about 75% of Adobe, but not 100%. So nobody's going to say no to more colors, are they? There's that. Contrast is also very high. It's a little bit higher than the HP's even. It's just a phenomenal display, that Dell 4K display. Sweet stuff. Now for color accuracy, though, here's where Surface Book 2 comes in, and also for aspect ratio. The Surface Book 2 is almost a 4K resolution display. It has a 3:2 aspect ratio, so that's why it's just not quite, because they're changing the dimensions overall. It has the best color accuracy. While it has about 75 to 80% of Adobe RGB, it's really well calibrated at the factory. The contrast is actually even a little bit higher again. So that combined with that very useful aspect ratio, when you're doing anything other than viewing a web page, it's useful to have more top and bottom area. It means less scrolling on web pages, Word documents, all that sort of thing. Also, if you're using it for creative stuff, if you are a photographer, typically digital SLRs we shoot in 3:2 aspect ratio, so you've got a good match there. So for people who are not working for print, where you need the wider color gamut, I think a lot of you might choose that Surface Book 2, even though it doesn't have quite the wide gamut. If you are doing video, though, and if you are doing work for print, the XPS 15 with the 4K display would be your choice, because obviously the 16:9 aspect ratio makes sense for you there, and the more color the better for print. So battery life, see, this is where that display comes back in again. The 1080p option could be useful. Both the Dell and the HP have this, when talking about the 4K model of the Dell, and obviously the one and only 4K option for the Spectre, they have about the same battery life, which is not phenomenal battery life. It's around 6.5 hours for productivity work and streaming video, not playing games or doing super heavy lifting like exporting video or something like that. That is what it is. Now, Dell, again, says that you'll get 2.5 to 3 hours longer with the 1080p display model, and given our past experience with XPS lines, that's probably going to be the case. The Surface Book 2 is the winner here because it's the famous Energizer Bunny. You get two batteries, one in the tablet section, one in the base, and it goes for about 10 hours easily, which is impressive. Again, not gaming, not doing things that are going to engage the dedicated graphics, but it's the winner there. So how about heat and noise? With all of these products, we're talking about really pushing the envelope of putting very high performance components into very thin and, relatively speaking, not very big places. So they're all going to run warm, particularly the Dell and the HP Spectre, because they got the dedicated graphics, the CPU, the RAM, the SSD, all of that stuff in the same section of the computer, the base, which is normal for a laptop. Surface Book 2 escapes this, and this is one of the brilliant things that they did, where the tablet section, the display area, that's where you have your CPU, that's where you have your RAM, that's where you have your SSD, and the base is where the dedicated graphics are, so you're separating the heat out. The dedicated graphics isn't going to heat up your CPU isn't going to heat up your dedicated graphics. You get the idea there. So there's a thermal advantage to that design when you're actually using the dedicated graphics for something graphically intensive. Between the Dell and the HP, the noise levels are actually pretty similar on those, which is to say you're going to hear them if you're exporting video, if you're doing heavy filters on raw files inside of Photoshop. Certainly if you're gaming, you're going to hear them, and they're neither is more annoying sounding than the other, and neither of them is annoying, but you'll hear plenty of air moving if you are trying to do something like play Fallout 4 or something like that, or PUBG. Surface Book 2, on the back side, the tablet section, you can feel some heat. Now, you're probably not going to be using it in tablet mode if you're doing things like playing PUBG, but there, the core temperatures will get up to about 80s, low 80s centigrade, and 100 is the allowable max for all of these before it starts to throttle back. Microsoft's pretty big on the throttling there to keep those temperatures under control. Dell, likewise, is more likely to use thermal throttling to keep the temperatures in the low to mid 80s. HP lets it free range and go close to that thermal ceiling of the 90s at times. They will eventually bring it back down to a lower temperature. So the HP will run the cores the hottest, though typically speaking, unless you are doing something like playing games, it's rarely going to really stay that high, at least for the unit that we have. Surface temperatures, the Gore-Tex really does help there for the Dell XPS 15 2-in-1, as does the fact that it has a thicker base. The metal plate is actually thicker on that than the average laptop. So they will all get toasty top and bottom. You'll feel some heat on the keyboard, but nothing really uncomfortable, but the strip between the keyboard and the display will get hotter, but that's not a place you normally touch. On the underside, it runs about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Cooler, the Dell XPS 15 on the bottom, thanks to the Gore-Tex insulating. The HP has a thinner metal base, feels a little hotter. Neither of them are going to burn your legs, but you'll feel them toasty, especially in the summertime if you're working them moderately hard. Not if you're just using Word or Excel or streaming something on Netflix, though. It's pretty close, in other words, between the Dell and the HP experientially in terms of the heat and the noise. When it comes to horsepower, the Dell XPS 15 2-in-1 and the HP Spectre x360 15 with the AMD Vega graphics inside, they're running the same hardware, folks. You've got a fast PCIe, NVMe SSD, no matter which of the three you choose here. You've got fast RAM inside, you've got the same CPU, you've got the same GPU. Unsurprisingly, the performance is pretty much the same. There's not even a point to showing you any graphs here because you would be seeing bars that are kind of flat and flat, the same as each other. So there's nothing really to recommend one or the other in terms of performance between the Dell and the HP. Now, when it comes to the Surface Book 2, things get a little different. That one's running on a lower wattage CPU, an Ultrabook U series CPU, so it's not quite as fast. Now, in short bursts, it can be, but it doesn't sustain the same high clock speeds for as long as the CPU will, the 8705G in your Dell and in your HP model. So a bit of a difference in the CPU performance there. Still pretty strong from the Surface Book 2, thanks to Intel's 8th generation CPUs, but yeah. Now for graphics, it flips because the NVIDIA GTX 1060 is the first of what I call NVIDIA's serious gaming graphics cards. It's the one that supports VR fully and officially. It's enough to let you play most AAA titles on high settings at 1080p resolution. It's good stuff. The HP and the Dell, their AMD Vega graphics are equivalent about to an NVIDIA GTX 1050 to 1050 Ti. So a definite step down of up to 40% in performance there. So if you are interested particularly in the graphics performance in some gaming, although none of these are intended to primarily be gaming machines, but yeah, the Surface Book 2 is totally going to win on this one. Same thing is true if you're using Adobe Premiere, anything else where you're actually going to use the GPU for your performance in your applications as well, too. The Surface Book 2, that GPU is going to kick. For upgrades and repairs, Surface Book 2 is a loser here because it's a sealed design, at least for the tablet section, which is where, again, the RAM, the CPU, and the SSD are. It's not meant to be serviced. The smaller internal battery is in that tablet section, too. You could take the base apart, but not much to do. That's where your graphics card is and your larger secondary battery. So yeah, there's nothing you can do. The configuration you buy is the configuration you live with. If it needs repairs, you're going to be calling up Microsoft and sending it to them to get a repair done. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the HP Spectre x360 15-inch, which is still the king of the upgradability in this family of machine. You have actually 2 RAM slots, which is very rare for a skinny Ultrabook. You have a socketed M2 SSD. Nice. Now the Wi-Fi card is not socketed, so that one is not so you can upgrade yourself. And obviously if you remove the base, you can swap the battery or repair it, whatever that is. The XPS 15 2-in-1 is sort of like your typical Ultrabook. The RAM is soldered on board. You can upgrade the SSD yourself if you want to, and the Wi-Fi card is soldered on board. It's not upgradable. As a tablet, Surface Book 2 clearly wins because it's the only one that separates apart in 2 pieces, so you can use it as a tablet. It's 1.5 pounds. It's not a burden to use. It's like not much heavier than a big iPad. That's nice if you want to use it for art or for note-taking, as long as you don't need the dedicated graphics while you're doing that because the graphics are in the base, then that's a freedom and a specialness that you're only going to get with the Surface Book 2 versus the other 2 where you're going to be holding almost 5 pounds in your hands if you're using it in tablet mode. For the pen, these are all the same active capacitive design, which means that the battery or the power is in the pen. These are not Wacom EMR. Dell is using Wacom AES 2.0, so that's the latest generation, which supports tilt, though not a lot of serious professional programs are actually supporting that yet at this point anyway. Both the HP and the Surface Book 2 use N-Trig, also nominally with tilt support, though finding programs like Photoshop doesn't really support it very well still. Yeah. They all have 4,096 levels of pressure sensitivity. As has been the case, Wacom AES has lower initial activation force. You don't have to press as hard before a line starts. The pressure curves are a little nicer. The palm rejection is a little better. So I would say Dell wins. Now, the other 2 are fairly capable, especially if you wear an art glove, for those of you who are artists, so you don't have problems with the palm rejection. They're all pretty capable. It's not a huge difference between them, but yeah, I would say that the Dell actually wins here. Lastly, ports. Well, this is an interesting one. Well, as we all know, Surface Book 2 doesn't have Thunderbolt 3 at all. It does have a USB-C port. They do have a docking connector, so to alleviate some of the pain there, but still boo-hoo for those of you who want that. It's kind of a bummer. Both the HP and the Dell have Thunderbolt 3 ports. Now, that's great, and 4-lane, too, 4 PCIe lanes. Now the Dell goes kind of they're going crazy with this to an extreme. They only have USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 ports, well, other than headphone jack. So it's kind of like dongle hell there with the Dell, but you have a lot of forward-looking ports. The HP is the happy medium. You get your Thunderbolt 3 ports and their so-called legacy, though they're not really legacy just yet, ports, USB-A, HDMI, a full-size SD card slot rather than the micro SD card slot on the Dell. Oh, the Surface Book 2 is a full-size SD card slot as well. So happy medium, HP there. Oh snap, I'm still holding them. No, just kidding. So there you have it, the smackdown between the three of them. Obviously, they're all high-end products. They're all very good in certain ways. Obviously, the Surface Book 2 is going to be the most different. It has a different design and form factor and some unique features, and you're paying for that difference too, aren't you? I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like that vid.